Let's learn Centur-Ion!
Like the POWA!
And welcome back to Let's Learn, Yu-Gi-Oh's most imperious deck building show. I'm Hardleg Joe, if you didn't know, and today we're learning Centurion, or Centur-Ion. I'm actually not sure how this is pronounced, because at the time of recording, this deck is not in Master Duel, which is the platform I usually build for, but I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to be released soon. We just got a ban list that banned King Calamity, a card that should probably be banned anyway, but wasn't really doing anything in the meta. All I really know about it is that this deck in the TCG often builds it, so it being banned ahead of time means that these will probably be coming soon. And I wanted to get ahead of the curve and learn them before they get released. Now, if you're new to Let's Learn, this is what I call a blind deck building show. I know very little about this archetype going in. I'm just going to be reading over the cards and trying to use my years of Yu-Gi-Oh experience to figure out how they work, to deck build on the fly. As a result, we will not be building the best Centurion deck, or even necessarily a good one, but this should give you a general idea of how these cards work, and an even better idea of how to build decks in general. But anyway, before we get into it, I do want to give a special thanks to this episode's sponsor, me. I made this. I'm just doing this all on my own, and I can afford to do that thanks to generous support of people on Patreon who help fund this channel. So if you like what I do and you'd like to support it yourself, consider checking out patreon.com/hardleggaming. There's a link in the description. Just $1 really helps. You get a free smile with every Patreon subscription. So consider checking that out. And otherwise, let's go ahead and stand up for Centurion. Okie dokie. So, whenever you're learning a new archetype, there is always one prime place that you want to start, one type of card that generally has unifying effects that'll tell you how the whole archetype works. And the chat is already way ahead of me on it. It's the field spell. And this archetype does have a field spell. Stand up, Centurion! Just look at her, projecting confidence, perfectly bunny as all things should be. Cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control a Centurion monster card. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. During your main phase, if this card was activated this turn, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard, place one Centurion monster from your deck in your spell trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. If a monsters is special summoned, you can immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon one synchro monster using monsters you control as material, including a Centurion monster. Okay, so right away this is letting you know that there's at least two main mechanics to this archetype. You have monsters that want to be continuous trap cards specifically, and you synchro summon during your opponent's turn. I guess you can synchro summon during your turn as well. It's when any monster is summoned, but usually when it has an effect like that, it means you want to synchro when your opponent summons a monster, which means we can guess that these are going to be your main forms of disruption. You'll be making them when your opponent does something, and then these will trigger when they're summoned. At least that's what I'm guessing. Having them become continuous traps is interesting too. One thing that new players may not understand intuitively is that by turning a monster into a trap, you inherently give it quick effects. Like, if any of these cards have effects while they're in the back row, because they're traps, that means you can use them on the opponent's turn as if they were an actual trap card. It'll be curious to see if that's actually like a mechanic, or if they're using it just like Snake Eyes do, where they put stuff in the back row as a way to remove them, and they don't actually have effects while in the back row. I'm going to assume they do though, because it specifies that they're a continuous trap and not a continuous spell. Alright, so from there I think the logical place to go next is into the extra deck. We know from the field spell that we're going to be synchro summoning during the opponent's turn, so these are probably our win condition. Let's see what these synchro monsters do if we summon them when our opponent summons. And we'll just start with this one. They're both level 12. Do they have equal attack? No, this one has higher attack, so it might be slightly better. We'll see. But this is Centurion Legatia, a level 12 machine synchro with 3,500 attack, 2,000 defense, and it requires 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuners. Your monsters with 2,000 or less attack cannot be destroyed by battle. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is special summoned, draw 1 card, then destroy the monster your opponent controls with the highest attack, your choice of tide. During the end phase, you can place 1 non-synchro Centurion monster from your hand or graveyard into your spell trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. Alright, so I was correct. When this card is summoned, you get to draw a card and then destroy a monster your opponent controls. Not the most effective removal, but the fact that it gives you a free card too is nice. That means you can play this with a lot of hand traps and maybe draw into some future disruption. It destroys the one with the highest attack, which means it doesn't target. You're basically letting the game mechanics choose which one it resolves, which is good in some ways. Obviously, if they have a low attack monster that you would rather destroy, it's unfortunate that you can't get to it. And then during the end phase, I guess if this is still around, yeah, during the end phase, that triggers, you can place 1 non-synchro Centurion as a continuous trap. No idea what they do as continuous traps yet, but I assume this is probably pretty good. If nothing else, it's a pretty big attacker or whatever. Nothing to write home about. It really depends on how easy this is going to be to summon. Alright, let's look at their second synchro, Centurion Auxilia. This is a Dark Dragon synchro with 3,000 attack, 3,000 defense. Already kind of interesting that they don't share a type or an attribute line, just a level line. And it also is generic, 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuners. Face-up cards in your spell trap zone cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is special summoned, add 1 Centurion from your deck to your hand. During the end phase, place 1 non-synchro Centurion that is banished or in your graveyard into your spell trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. Alright, so this is your searcher. Just add 1 Centurion from your deck to your hand. I was not expecting that on a big level 12, 3,000 attack monster. And it mostly just gives protection to your back row, which makes me think that maybe these aren't necessarily the win condition. This does get some disruption, but if your other big card is searching Centurions and protecting them, maybe one of these does something really impressive while in the back row, something that disrupts your opponent or gives them a bunch of extra attack. It's also possible this archetype is just bad. That's always a consideration. Maybe they made this because they needed to make it. Only time will tell. I guess we're gonna go ahead and start looking into these now. We've got 4 monsters total, 2 level 4s, 2 level 8s. Hard to know where we should start because the lower level monsters, the normal summonable ones, are probably the ones that let you go into the synchros, while I imagine the big level ones are probably your payoffs, the things you want as continuous traps. Considering we've got like 3 cards that place them, I think it's best to start with the high level monsters. We'll see if these have any cool payoffs, and then we'll learn how to synchro summon. These both have equal stats, so let's go ahead and start with this one. Centurion Emeth the Sixth. This is an Earth Machine monster, very good for Infinitrax possibly, with 2,000 attack and 3,000 defense, so it makes a better wall than a window. And during your opponent's turn, if this card is in your hand or graveyard, quick effect, target 1 Centurion you control, except another copy of itself, place it in the spell trap zone as a continuous trap, and if you do, special summon this card. Also, you cannot special summon another copy of itself for the rest of this turn. During the main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon it. You can only use each effect once per turn. That's very interesting. So it can summon itself as a quick effect by targeting any monster and making it a spell trap. I guess you could do that with the synchros, but they don't have any effects while they're in the back row. And then if this becomes a back row, you can just special summon it during either player's main phase because it's a continuous trap. And like I said, traps inherently are like quick effects. So that possibly helps you with the field spell to make these during your opponent's turn, but you're not getting a whole lot out of it. I thought this might do something a little more impactful than just exist on the field. I guess it can block, it does have a 3000 booty, and at least has a summoning condition, so you don't have to worry about it bricking up your hand, as long as you have a low-level Centurion, although there are only 2 of them, so that does make it a little tricky. I would like to see more, but we'll see, we'll see. Let's go ahead to the next one, Centurion Gargoyle II. This is a Dark Dragon effect, 2000, 3000, just like the previous one, and just to check real quick, this is a Earth Machine, this is a Light Machine, this is a Dark Dragon, also a Dark Dragon. Huh. So they keep the same type, but they change the attribute, but just on this one. Very strange indeed. Anyway, let's go ahead and check out this effect. You can send one face-up Centurion card you control to the graveyard, special summon this from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon another copy of itself for the rest of this turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, add this card to your hand. During your main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon it, then reduce its level by 4. You can only use each effect once per turn. Huh. That's also very interesting. So it has a similar summoning condition, but instead of making something a trap, it just sends it to the graveyard. Now this can summon from the field or graveyard, so, you know, you can send this to the graveyard to summon this, and then summon this out of the graveyard, assuming you haven't already summoned it this turn, by making this a continuous trap. And then while it's a continuous trap, you can special summon it, assuming you haven't special summoned it this turn. So it looks like you're setting, because these are both once per turns on just like summoning it, not using its effect, it looks like you're going to be setting up something and then resolving it during the opponent's turn. Making these continuous traps, and then maybe during your opponent's turn, summon them out, synchro summon, make these, and perhaps there's just other ones you can make. The turning itself to essentially a level 4 is interesting, because that means with these other level 4s, you now have access to level 8 synchros. There's none in the archetype, but I believe this doesn't restrict you into what you can make. Synchro summon one monster using Centurion monsters. So you could potentially like summon this, make it level 4, and then if you have this on the field for whatever reason, you can make like a Psy-Frame Lord Omega and get one card out of their hand or something like that. Very interesting. We'll have to look at more synchros to see what they can make. Also, I just noticed only this one is a tuner. You have a synchro archetype with 1 tuner. This thing better be incredibly accessible. Otherwise, making anything with them is going to be very difficult. I guess we'll find out. Let's go ahead to Centurion Primera. This is a level 4 light spellcaster tuner, 1600 attack, 1600 defense. And while this card is a continuous trap, level 5 or higher Centurion monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is normal or special summoned, add 1 Centurion card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. Also, you cannot special summon another copy of this card for the rest of the turn. During the main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon it. Alright, very interesting. So for starters, let's go ahead and just put 2 copies of this in here, because it's your searcher. As soon as it's summoned, normal or special, you get any Centurion card, which means not just the monsters, but also all these spell traps, and they have more spell traps than monsters, so maybe these end up completely like bringing the deck together in a way that the monsters don't. Like the rest of them, while it's a trap, you can summon it, and it can only be summoned once per turn, but I can kind of see at least like part of a line here, right? Like, normal summon Primera, grab Emeth, Emeth summons by making this a continuous trap, and then during your opponent's turn, you can summon this out and then synchro summon. And it also offers some protection. I was really hoping that they would use the fact that these are traps to do some kind of like quick effect pop or whatever. It's interesting that like, because it's a continuous trap specifically, it offers a continuous effect, just some protection. That's kind of outdated at this point. This would have been a really cool mechanic like 3 or 4 years ago, to be able to have this card where it's like, yeah, I'm going to sit on a 3000 and it can't be destroyed by card effects, and then if you try to get rid of it in some other way, like with a targeted effect, then you can summon it and then synchro summon with it. These days, I feel like the protection isn't worth a lot, but I guess it will stop you from getting hit with, like, Raigeki or something, so there's that. A little interesting for sure. Sucks that this is your only tuner, but again, maybe some of these will help turn something else into a tuner or summon more monsters. We'll see. We've got one more main deck monster. Let's go ahead and take a look at Centurion Trudeau. Is this like the Prime Minister of Canada? I don't remember him looking quite like this, but you know, I don't pay attention a lot to Canadian politics. Either way, this is a dark pyro monster for some reason. It finally changed type. 1000 attack, 2000 defense, and the following effect. During your main phase, you can place this card you control and one Centurion from your hand or deck, except another copy of itself, in your spell trap zone as face-up continuous traps. Also, you cannot special summon another copy of this for the rest of the turn. During the main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon it, and then you can increase its level by 4. You can only use this effect once per turn. Alright, I wasn't expecting this, so it's not a tuner, but it is a 1-card starter. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and just put this in here at 3. If you have this on the field, you can just put it into the back row, along with Primora, or any of these other ones if you already have Primera, and then you can just summon both of them during your opponent's turn. You know, this comes out, and even though this is only a level 4, it could just make itself level 8 so you can go into your level 12s. Or again, it gives you access to level 8 synchros, even though the deck doesn't have any. We're really going to have to look through all the level 8 synchros and see which ones gain effects when they're summoned during the opponent's turn. But I can at least see some potential here. I get what you're trying to do, and as people in chat are already pointing out, because this is a level 4 pyro, it's a frickin' bonfire target. And because it's a starter, you probably want to play bonfire. So we'll just go ahead and throw 3 of that in there while we're at it. And then we'll check out the rest of these cards. Alright, so looking briefly at the spell traps, we've got 3 quick play spells, a regular trap, and a counter trap. And I don't have any reason to believe any of these are more important. I mean, counter traps might be good if we had a way to search them. And I guess we do. This can search anything, but I feel like most of the time you want to search a monster. But you know what? Let's go ahead and start with the counter trap. Let's see if this is going to be like a build around, something that's really great, or something that has too difficult of an activation requirement to really make it worth it. So, Centurion True Awakening. When a spell trap or monster effect is activated, send a monster card from your spell trap zone to the graveyard, negate the activation, and destroy the card. You can only activate 1 per turn. I mean, that's not bad by any means. I'm really curious to see how easy it is to get more cards in the back row, because I feel like you might, at this point, be giving up a synchro summon in order to negate, but it's still a negate. Whether or not you play 3 of it just so you can draw it on the first turn consistently, I'm not sure, but it's not bad. It's not awful. I would definitely play it as a 1-of just to get off Primera in case you already have set up with everything else. While we're in the traps, let's go ahead and check out the regular one, Centurion Phalanx. Editor, real quick, could you get the box art for the old Super Nintendo game Phalanx up on the screen? Ain't that a thing? Crazy. This was a video game about spaceships and shooting. Crazy box art. Anyway, target 1 face-up monster card on the field, banish it, and if you do, during the standby the next turn, special summon that banished monster to its owner's field. You can banish this card from your graveyard, target 1 Centurion Synchro in your graveyard, special summon it, but it loses 1500 attack. You can only use 1 Phalanx per turn, and only once that turn. Alright, I mean, it is a targeted banish, that's pretty good, but it brings the monster back. Really weird, it feels like they've been trying to nerf banish effects lately. They're just afraid to give anything like a hard banish. It's alright. Maybe if we have more ways to search the spell traps or some way to get a bunch of them on the field, this will be good. As it stands, I feel like the negate is better. Yeah, because it's a negate and destroy. This gets rid of it but brings it back. Maybe if you have a way to OTK or something. I guess this also does have a graveyard effect. You can bring back one of your synchro monsters, but they're gonna lose 1500 attack, so they're gonna be significantly weaker. Although this does get its effect when it's special summoned. So you still get to draw and then search. You know what, I changed my mind. We'll go ahead and put this in here, if nothing else, for the graveyard effect. That might be worth it just to be able to reuse this after it's been destroyed. But I'm very iffy about that. Alright, so from there, let's go ahead and look at these quick play spells, starting with Wake Up, Centurion! Don't you know that the shadow government is putting chemicals into the water? When are you gonna wake up? If a monster card is face up in your spell trap zone, you can declare a level 4 or 8. Special summon one Centurion token with 0 attack, 0 defense, and the declared level. It cannot be used as fusion or link material. During your main phase, you can banish this card from the graveyard, send one Centurion from your deck to the graveyard, except for Wake Up Centurion, and you can only use each effect once per turn. Alright, this is an interesting one. So it's not a monster, but it's kind of a monster. It doesn't give you another tuner, which is unfortunate, but it does give you a level 4 or 8, and also lets you Foolish Burial the Phalanx. I believe it's not like you can use each effect. Yeah, you can use each effect once per turn, but you can use both effects in the same turn. So you can make a token, summon, and then Foolish Burial this, so that you can get something out of the graveyard. I mean, not that that's useful enough to, like, want to Foolish Burial, but it makes it more that, like, now I'd feel safer playing this, because I don't necessarily have to resolve it on the field to get the effect back to, like, pop and draw a card. This one I'm kind of iffy about. Might be essential, might be meh, really depends, but I'm at least going to put it in at 2 more in the side deck for now, because this might be something that you want to play at 3 just to have more monsters. Moving on, we got Emblema Oath. Quick play spell, activate one of these effects. Either place a Centurion monster from your deck into the spell trap zone as a continuous trap, and for the rest of the turn, while you control that card, or any card with the same name, you cannot special summon from the extra deck except Centurion monsters. Or you can set one Centurion spell trap from your deck. Oh, okay. Well then, you could just set all the spell traps? Oh, but they're all quick plays and traps. And quick plays, like traps, can't be activated the turn they're set. That's still probably good enough. I mean, it does lock you out of anything other than Centurions if you get the monster, but getting one of these out of the deck and directly into the spell trap zone does seem like it has a lot of combo potential. You can place a lot of cards in the back row. Yeah, I'll play this at 3. It's essentially a searcher. Alright, and that just leaves us with the last card, Centurion Bonds. Buy now, sell, quick play spell. Place one Centurion from your hand or graveyard into your spell trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. If a Centurion synchro monster is special summoned to your side of the field while this card is in the graveyard, you can banish this, target one Centurion in your graveyard, place it in your spell trap zone as a continuous trap. You can only use each effect once per turn. Huh. That's kind of underwhelming. With how few cards this deck has, and with how many hoops you gotta jump through as far as every card being like a hard once per turn, I would expect this to, like, place one from the deck into the spell trap zone. As it stands, it feels more like an extender than anything. And then the graveyard effect is to just get back another, it's just double recovery. Recovery or an extender, either way, when you're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh, you're mostly setting up for turn 1. You know, you're trying to think of, like, what board you can make that is going to prevent your opponent from playing or prevent them from doing their win condition so that you can do your win condition. And I can't really see this helping you all that much. Maybe there's some combo I'm not seeing. The problem with this is that it's kind of a combo deck. You want to get 2 monsters on board, make a synchro, but because everything is limited to 1 summon per turn, and because there's an emphasis on summoning during your opponent's turn with the field spell, everything is kind of delayed. You're having to think like 1 turn ahead. It's not enough to set up everything on your field, you're setting up stuff so that during your opponent's turn, you can play and do other stuff. Now, to be fair, a lot of my favorite decks do work like that. Stuff like Goaty, stuff like Crystron. The difference, of course, is that Goaty and Crystron both had cards within their archetype that were win conditions on their own. Synchro monsters that, if you summoned them, would pretty much win you the game, or at least disrupt your opponent enough that you could win the game on a subsequent turn. This doesn't really have it. Like, one pop is not really going to win you anything. One pop, even with like a counter trap to back it up, that's doing better, but you really need more. Fortunately, I think there is more available because, again, we're not locked into exclusively Centurion monsters. We can make any kind of synchro monster. It's just weird that our win condition is clearly not going to be within the archetype. I can see now why people like to play King Calamity, because summoning this during the opponent's turn and just locking them out of the entire game, pretty effective. But without this, we're going to have to find some other level 12s or level 8s that we can make that might be of use. Now, fortunately, there's not a whole lot of level 12 synchros to look through. Like, I could read through all these in about 5 minutes, especially because the vast majority of these are things that we're not going to be able to make anyway. Like, just for example, Quasar requires a tuner synchro and 2 or more non-tuner synchros. We're not doing that. We have to make something that we can make with regular numbers of monsters, something that doesn't require, like, specific tuners or whatever, so I'm sure we'll be pretty limited. I'll go ahead and read through these off camera, see if I can find anything that might be a suitable win condition now that we don't have access to King Calamity. Alright, so after reading through all the level 12s, we came up with quite a few things we can build. Including, you might have noticed, Cosmic Blazar Dragon and Red Supernova Dragon, which are things that we shouldn't be able to make, but I wasn't aware of Crimson Dragon. This is a generic level 12 synchro, and quick effect, so during either player's turn, target a level 7 or higher synchro on the field except itself, return it to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon a dragon synchro with the same level, and this is treated as a synchro summon. So basically, this is a way to cheat out any of the big dragons that have very specific materials, and all we have to do to accomplish that is summon this alongside another level 12, like say maybe this once it's used its effect, or maybe do this, get a search, and then use it with Crimson Dragon to trade out for Cosmic Blazar that's this big Omni Negate, or Red Supernova that can just banish all the cards your opponent controls. I haven't played the deck enough to know if it's really easy to get out 2 level 12 synchros, but, you know, I have a feeling we might be able to. Even if we can't though, there's still some other candidates that are decent. Final Sigma is just a big unaffected towers that can deal double battle damage if it's in the extra monster zone. Might be good for closing out games. The Super Heavy Samurai is a 4,000 attacker because it attacks while in defense. And then if your opponent activates a spell trap, you can draw until you have 3 cards in hand, which, depending on how well this empties out their hand, might be another good thing. And then Despian Lulu Wailith, which seems almost custom designed for this archetype. Its effect is, if a card leaves the extra deck, so, you know, if your opponent summons any extra deck monster, you can make all monsters you currently control gain 500 attack permanently, then non-targeting negate the effects of one face-up card until the end of the turn. Like, that's pretty decent in general, you know, a negate an attack boost on a deck that already has like a 3,500 beater. But what's crazy is this other part. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard, because it was set there this turn, you can special summon 1 light spellcaster from your hand or deck whose attack equals its own defense. And what do you know? We just happen to have a light spellcaster with 1,600 both ways that searches everything in the archetype whenever it's summoned. So that seems like pretty good. I mean, it is a floating effect, so maybe you don't always want to make it. Maybe you'd rather go into one of these. But it's nice to know that, you know, pretty much any 2 cards or just this on itself is going to be able to get you a negate that also floats into an extender. So overall, pretty good. You know, we filled in half of the extra deck, and maybe we could put a couple more of these Centurions in here. I mean, we do have Revival, but maybe we want to play more. Of course, the thing is, this deck also makes, level 8 synchros, and unlike level 12 pool, there are significantly more level 8 monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Level 8 synchros are very common. There's 4 whole pages of them here on YGO Omega. I guess not full pages, but still quite a few. And I'm gonna, again, look over them off camera. If you're building this yourself, you know, this might be a good time to just look up some deck lists, because I'm pretty sure someone's already done the work of looking through all these to figure out which ones are the best. But I'm gonna do it here on myself, you know, just to try to learn things. I will say that is like a little bit of advice I can give if you're new to deck building and trying to learn more about Yu-Gi-Oh! If you can find an excuse to sit down and like just see what level 8 synchros do and try to familiarize yourself with them, not only will you have better game knowledge for the next time you run into a deck that can make level 8s, but you'll also be more familiar with these if you happen to see them, you know, while you're dueling. Someone summons like Risen Dragite, then you have an idea of what its effect is and whether or not you need to be worried. Alright, and there we go. It's been a while for me, but hopefully that transition was really quick for you all, and we actually came up with something pretty neat. You may notice there's a bunch of non-synchros in here, and that's because while looking through the level 8s, we found one that was particularly interesting. Zorora, the Magistus Conflagrant Calamity. What a surprise, there's actually a second Calamity that kind of works. This is one that you normally don't see because it requires a spellcaster tuner, but as I pointed out earlier, our only tuner is a spellcaster. And if this card is synchro summoned, you can equip one Magistus monster from your extra deck, and your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters with the same card type, Fusion, Synchro, Ixie, or Link, as a Magistus in your spell trap zone. And then if this card is in your graveyard, you could target a Magistus you control, yada yada. We're never going to do that because we're pretty much just playing the one. And the idea is, you know, we summon this during our opponent's turn after they summon some kind of monster, you know, maybe they make it clear that they're on Snake Eyes, and we're like, oh, that's a Link deck. Let's equip the Link to this so that they can't make any Link monsters. Or maybe they summon a Pearly card and you're like, ah, I see. It would be a shame if you couldn't activate any of your Ixie monster effects. Or maybe they're unbranded and you equip the fusion monster. So just a neat little way to get floodgates. And the Magistus Synchro is actually also a level 8 and kind of useful. If it's destroyed after you Synchro summon it, it destroys all face-up cards your opponent controls. So if need be, you can kind of put this out like a time bomb and force them to waste some kind of non-destruction removal on it. Otherwise, everything gets destroyed. Other than that, I just included 2 level 8s that I thought were like generically good. Psyframe Lord Omega, just a hand loop. Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, this is a nice like banish non-targeting when your opponent activates an effect monster. And then Cyber / Harpy Lady, this is another rarely used monster, because its effect is when a spell trap card or effect is activated, you could target a monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. Normally this isn't played because it kind of relies on you to either already have traps or your opponent to have traps, but in this case, our monsters become the traps, and they can activate those trap effects to summon themselves at any point during the opponent's turn, which means you can make this, and then if your opponent does something, you can summon out one of your other monsters, bounce one of their monsters, and then maybe use this level 8 as synchro material to go into something bigger. And you know, if you already have Crimson Dragon, you can like pop a card and then trade it out for one of these. So it's kind of coming together, at least as far as like what the win condition is going to be. The problem, of course, is filling out this main deck, because I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do. We could put in a whole bunch of level 8s to special summon. I don't feel like you really want to play a lot of these. I guess like this is pretty good if you've got this, but we've already got a lot of ways to search and everything. There also are some new engines, things like the Horus cards that let you put level 8s on the field, and those do other stuff. We'll probably want to play a bunch of hand traps since we are drawing and we are in a hand trap format, even though Snake Eyes got hit. So once again, you know, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to mess around with it a little bit, I'll come back with whatever I come up with. Okay, so after looking around for a while and thinking about different things, this is what I came up with. I decided that we had plenty of starters. You know, Primera is a starter, Trudeau is a starter, the field spell is a starter, and this spell, plus Bonfire Search is this. So I got like 15 ways to get into our main plays. So I figured let's try that and then just fill everything else in with hand traps. That's a pretty safe route to go these days. You can always remove hand traps if you want to add in another engine, but I felt like it would be better to do this than to try to do something like put in the Horus engine, because then we'd also have to revamp the entire extra deck and put in a bunch of rank 8s. Or we could throw in, a lot of people suggested Bestials. These are all level 6 hand traps, summons during your opponent's turn, and then that plus Primera would allow us to go into level 10s like Barone or Chaos Angel that banishes when it's summoned. Instead, I decided to just stick with what we had, try to make our level 8s and our level 12s as often as possible, and then just go in with all these hand traps and protection from hand traps, of course. I ended up putting 3 of the Emeth in here. That's probably not right. I think I could get away with playing 1, maybe even just putting in a bunch of other level 8s, again, stuff like the Horus that you could leave on to synchro with. But the field spell does make us discard a card, and this is like you could summon it out of the graveyard, so it's like the only thing that really has any synergy with that. And I don't know, even if we put the Horus stuff in there, it might be good to play more of these, because you can essentially discard it for free off of the sarcophagus. But that's going into a whole nother deck. The point is, I decided to go with a more pure variant. We're playing 3 of this, and I'm playing 3 of the counter trap, which chat says is a bad idea, and again, probably, but I want to try it out, see how it works, especially since I imagine we're going to be going first, trying to see what kind of board we can build. I'm curious to see if we can get, like, the ability to make 2 level 8s on the field, plus the counter trap. 3 disruptions is usually enough in the modern game to stop your opponent from executing on their win condition. If it doesn't stop them entirely, it at least slows them down. And then from that point, you should be able to go over the top with your own monsters, especially since a lot of these like level 12s have more than 3,000 attack and have the ability to boost even higher. So now that we've got a build, a rough draft version, the next thing is to test it out to see if we can do anything. Obviously, if you're playing on Master Duel, you want to go in the solo mode, try it out against the AI. That way you'll be able to see what you can do without hand traps. Fortunately here on YGO Omega, we have the test hand feature. I can just start with a random hand of 1. I forgot to, I'll have to change the settings, but I'll again do that off camera, see what I can come up with, and then I'll be back to show you what I've learned. Alright, so after sitting down and playing a few test hands, I think I know the deck well enough to show you off a little 1-card combo. And there's a bunch of ways to get to it. You know, you could start with this, you could start with Primera, but let's go ahead and start with this because I think it's funnier. You can go ahead and normal summon this gal, user effect. I'm gonna move her back into the back rows along with Primera. Activate the Primera. Summon it out, activate that effect, grab yourself a dang old field spell, because you always want to make sure you get the field spell. Activate the field spell, and then you got a couple different options. I mean, you could, we need to get a card into the back row, which we need to discard a card for, or we could just activate this. Alternatively, we could activate this to search a spell trap, and then discard one of the hand traps in our hand. In this case, just to show, let's go ahead and activate this. We'll discard whatever, and we'll put a Emeth into the back row, which we can immediately summon out. Hello there, how's it going? Do I want to use the effect? No, it's my turn, I can just synchro summon. And then we want to go with Auxilia, the dang old Searcher card that I almost forgot about. Level 12 Searcher. When it's sent, you can get whatever you want. Maybe one of these traps, you know? I think I'll go for the trap. Get the trap, and we could search out another trap. You know what? We'll go ahead and search another trap. Set a Centurion trap directly from the deck. I pressed the wrong button. Pretend this is a Centurion trap, alright? And then we'll just end our turn. And then during the end phase, this will get 1 card from our graveyard, put it face up as a continuous trap. And then we gotta wait till our opponent's main phase. They get to take 1 action. They'll be like, okay, your days are numbered. We can go ahead and summon this out. Activate the effect, search whatever we want. If you need more spell traps, you can. You can also get If you didn't have one of these, or if you only wanted to summon one of those, you could grab one because it can summon out of the hand. Either way, I think, we'll just go for follow-up. We'll get the bonds for next turn. And then what we're going to do is summon this. And if you want, you can make this level 8 and just, like, synchro with it there. But, oh yeah, and you can make a level 8, depending on what your opponent has. If you want to go for the Magistus with the 2 level 4s, you can. But because we're playing the trap, I think it's better to do this. You can get this card out of the graveyard, or again, you could have searched it to your hand. Move this back into the back row. Summon it out. Then activate your field spell. Synchro Shokan into the Crimson Dragon. Use the Crimson Dragon effect. Target this level 12 you already got. Shuffle it back. Get out Cosmic Blazar. Just negate anything. Oh, you activate a spell trap? No, we're gonna counter trap that. Send that off. Oh, you got another one? No, we're gonna Cosmic Blazar. Send that off. Hopefully that's all they got. You got a 3,000 defender, and if they don't clear this, then during the end phase, what you're going to do, whoops, there we go, is you're going to activate this, and you're just going to put the Trudeau back into the back row. Oh, and your Blazar comes back. If you're not sure how Blazar negates anything by banishing and then it comes back. And what do you know? You remember that combo we had where we started with this? And you just do the whole thing again. You could just summon this out again, activate the effect, put it back into the back rows, get the, I got the wrong one, I was thinking one step ahead. But yeah, you could just get yourself another Primera, summon her back, except now that you already have the field spell, you can get your other spells and traps. You can easily make a, whatchamacallit, another level 12, and usually that should give you more than enough stuff. Now, of course, if you're going against an actual deck, something that is going to have hand traps and stuff, you won't be able to get through all that. This may not necessarily survive, but as I often say in these episodes, your first test is to see what you can do on an open field. If your opponent's not really going to interact with you, if they're not going to put a bunch up, can you do your win condition then? If so, you've reached the first step. The next step is figuring out how you can do that through disruption. And obviously the hand traps and stuff will help, but I've already learned quite a bit just from playing like this version of the deck. Like almost immediately, let's go back here, let's go ahead and close this. I realize like we don't need 2 of these. Or we don't need 3 of them. 2 is even maybe too many, but I like having 2 because it gives us a discard, it gives us 1. We absolutely don't need 3 of these. We could play 1, 1, even the, like, running 1 of each of these is kind of iffy. And what do you know? Now we have room for more stuff. We could put in more hand traps, we could put in another engine, we could put draw power or something like that. But we have a notion of where to go from here. Alright, so after sitting and pondering for a while about where we might take things for a second draft, I'm kind of running into a wall. The problem we have is that there's only 1 tuner. The tuner summon is a hard once per turn, and even if we got a second tuner on the field, the field spell only allows you to synchro during your opponent's turn once per turn. We could maybe throw some more cards out again, maybe the Horus engine to get like a level 8 negate in addition to everything we're doing if we want to completely revamp the extra deck, get rid of the Magista stuff, and put some like rank 8 Ixie monsters in there. I mean, I'm pretty sure these can be used for rank 8s too, so it might be pretty good. But then I was noticing there are 2 cards I didn't include yet. Cards that are OCG exclusive at the time of recording. Now, we don't know yet when these are coming to Master Duel, or if they're going to be coming in one big thing. It's possible they'll leave out some of the support. It's also possible that the OCG support will be included. So I'm going to go ahead, take a moment, let's read over the OCG support and see if this helps, because the one thing I'm noticing is that they have another level 4 tuner. Maybe this will help them to get, another synchro on board, give us some more possibilities so it's not all going on Primora. The biggest problem this deck has in general is just a severe lack of monsters. 4 is not very many for a whole archetype. So let's check out Centurion Audrey, Dark Dragon Tuner, kind of like the other one, 1800 attack, 1400 defense. If this card you control would be used as synchro material, you can treat it as a non-tuner. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If it's normal or special summoned, and you have an Embla card and a Centurion card in your graveyard, you can draw one card. Also, you cannot special summon Audrey for the rest of the turn. During your main phase, if this is a continuous trap card, you can special summon it. During the main phase. Alright, so we're not getting another way to synchro. It's interesting that they want you to summon Embla? Which one is that again? Okay, it's just Emblema Oath, which is weird because this is like the one non-searchable card. So it's like, hey, if you were lucky enough to get this in your opening hand and use it, then you can draw an additional card when you use this. It certainly helps because any amount of monsters helps, but it doesn't fix the underlying problems with the archetype, I feel like. I don't know, let's see, they also got a spell card, which is Emblema to Oh, there's another Emblema card now. Okay, I gotcha. So it's not searchable, it's not a Centurion card, but if you happen to get this, you can use it with that and then make more cards. But what does this actually do? It's another quick play. Banish a face-up Centurion monster card from your spell trap zone, then target one card your opponent controls and banish it. Oh good, it doesn't come back. It's just a banish for a banish. And if I'm not mistaken, what was it? It was this one, yeah. This card, during the end phase, you can get a Centurion that's banished during your graveyard and put it in the spell trap zone as a continuous trap. Alright, so we're getting some synergies, you know. Something that you were going to do anyway, now you can use this. Although I'm not sure if you'd want to... I guess you'd use it on this and then bring it back, or maybe you'd use it on Primera. Either way, let's see what the rest of this effect is. If this set card is destroyed or banished by an opponent's activated effect, place 2 Centurions with different names from your hand, deck, graveyard, or banishment into your spell trap zone as continuous effects. Ugh, I was excited about that first half, and then they have like this weird floating effect that only works if your opponent uses stuff. Alright, well, it's neat, but it's not neat enough. We're still kind of locked into the fact that we can only really make one synchro per turn. I mean, with this, we might be able to make 2. You know what, give me a moment. Let me see if I can come up with a combo that uses this that actually does something. Although we'd have to open with this too, wouldn't we? I don't know. I'll just put this in. We'll put this in, not even worry about the atonement, and see if we can figure out some combo that makes use of this real quick. Alright, so after messing around with it for a little while, I mean, it certainly is better. It's nice having another name that you can use, and I will say, like, it makes this card so much better, because once you get this, you can place Audrey into the back row, then you summon Audrey and you immediately get a draw, and then you're probably going to link it away, but then you're probably going to put it back in the back row during the end phase, so you get to draw again during your opponent's turn. So it turns this into a pretty prestigious draw engine, where you're just going to be drawing during your turn and your opponent's turn, and just getting into more of your hand traps. But it doesn't resolve the main problem, which is that, like, if you do this, you're locked into making exclusively the Centurions, and they're not that great. I mean, they've got high attack, but they're not gonna like OTK for the most part, unless you've already cleared things off with a bunch of other cards, and you're still limited to 1 synchro during your opponent's turn. Granted, you know, the stats are not awful on some of these. They've got 3,000 defenders, you've got protection, so maybe you could make it work. Overall, an interesting idea. I'm sure that you could make something good with this. I'm curious now, as always, to see like how other people have managed to build the deck. A lot of people in chat are saying that it really just was like King Calamity Turbo, and without that, the deck doesn't have anything going for it. And I can believe it, but I feel like there's probably something I'm missing, something else we could do. But like I said at the beginning of this, the point is not to make the best deck possible. The point is just to learn what the cards do, what their strengths and weaknesses are, And now hopefully you understand. If you want to build this on your own, you have a good starting place where if you watch those deck profiles, you'll have an idea of what they're talking about. And if you don't want to build it, but you do find yourself facing it on the Master Duel ladder, hopefully you'll have some idea of its weak points, where to stop it. Probably this thing. This thing is the most to stop. I would destroy the field spell. Without that, they can't synchro during your turn. Although, once they make it to the main phase, you know, they can do it as a quick effect anyway. Something you really kind of have to side like Cosmic Cyclone against. But at least you know, like, the limits of their power. They're really going to get the one synchro summon, and then if you could fight your way through that, you're golden. You're golden, Pony Boy. And with that, I think I'm done here. I usually have like an outro and something, but I've been here for a while and I can't really think very good. So, the Critter hasn't said hello. Critter, you want to say hello? There you go. That's what you're getting. I hope you enjoy it. Now get out of my house.